to the last syllable. Overture. During the summer solstice, Imperial heroes defeated several attacks by an, at the time, unknown force of soldiers. They attacked in Kalaveza, in Astolat, and in Miaren, targeting the Raven Seers of Ishal, the Prime Harp, and the Pool of Silver Clouds. These attackers, their origin and motivations initially elusive, eventually proved to be servants of an Eternal of the Day realm referred to as Cold Sun. Even as the Archmage of Day and magicians of the Conclave met with representatives of this new Eternal in formal parley, news began to spread of further attacks across the Empire. These assaults targeted locations as diverse as the Blood Red River Museum in Tassato, the Wellspring of Jade in Savos, the Wells of Janon in Gulhul, the farmlands of the Grey Watch Grasses in Rakos, Gulnar's Deeps, the Grand Conservatory of Music in Redoubt, and the Tower of Light and Shadow. The list seemed never-ending. The attackers were ultimately unsuccessful, but many people died in their assaults. In each case, the victorious survivors spoke of preternatural blue-clad soldiers implacably seeking to murder everyone they encountered and destroy these imperial landmarks. As the summit drew to a close, egregores began to warn of whole groups of their people simply winking out of existence. After the summit, it became apparent that these people had been slaughtered by those same blue-uniformed soldiers. All the evidence spoke to attacks by the forces of the Cold Sun, an entity that seems impossibly to be dedicated to the absolute destruction of all thinking beings across the whole of creation, starting with the Empire. Heeding the warnings, 3 assemblies of the Imperial Synod upheld statements of principle, urging their people to prepare for violence. The Navarre Assembly and the Dornish Assembly warned their nations to be vigilant and to fight. The Vigilance Assembly warned the faithful to flee rather than engage these powerful combatants. Yet in the days immediately following the summer solstice, it appeared that the threat was ended. Pure morning. After the solstice, the autumn magic roused by the bounty of the brilliant broker faded almost imperceptibly into another imperial enchantment. A diverse group of Urizen magicians gathered at Anvil to perform Bright Eyes Gleam in the Depths, building on the foundation of autumn to align the Empire with the Day realm. The dawning magic brought with it a sense of clarity and focus. It kindled an awareness of lost and hidden things, especially in miners, and it caused Regio across the Empire, those aligned with the Day realm, to blossom. Even the weakest existing Regio became more potent, and new Regio opened in every Imperial territory. Opened like doors, and something came through those doors. Arise. At first, the attacks seemed just as scattered and uncoordinated as those during the solstice itself. Yet within a few days they became more and more focused, more organised, more dangerous. They consist of the same blue-clad warrior heralds of Cold Sun, but with increasing numbers of additional troops, powerful magicians wielding forceful magic to scatter the opposing defenders and break their shields, healers infused with the raw power of creation who revitalised the warriors and repaired both their bodies and their weapons, barely distinguishing between the two. Skilled captains and officers possessed of near unbreakable armour, capable of inflicting lethal strikes with their day-forged weapons. The heralds of Cold Sun fight without mercy and evidence little concern for their own survival. Each engagement follows a similar pattern. The soldiers bring down anyone capable of standing against them, and once they are no longer under immediate threat, execute anyone who still survives. In many cases there is nothing left of the fallen save grey ash. Their bodies and possessions alike burned away in a moment by the irresistible flame of the Cold Sun. Fortunately, the warning delivered by the Vigilance Assembly has spread far and wide, and not only among those dedicates of that particular virtuous path. On receiving the news from Anvil, these priests make a point of sharing the warning with anyone who will listen, perhaps inspired a little by the lesson of Joshua Benson, whose inspirational tomb had been consecrated during the solstice. As a consequence, when the servants of Cold Sun appear, people flee rather than fight. This means their homes are destroyed, but greatly reduces the loss of life. It is hardly negligible, however. It will take time to do a census, but over the months between the end of the summer solstice and the start of the autumn equinox, there is little doubt that as many as 2,000 Imperial citizens are slain by the soldiers of Cold Sun. Most are combatants who sought to fight, but perhaps a third are people unable or unwilling to flee who were ruthlessly cut down by the merciless heralds. The number might have been even higher, despite the warning of the Vigilance Assembly, if not for the efforts of Dornish Knights and Navarre Thorns. Heeding their own assemblies, a number of brave Imperial champions have spent the last several months fighting Cold Sun's emissaries, supporting communities and aiding defenders from every nation. Using the Trods, these champions are able to respond quickly and effectively to word of incursions, often turning up in the nick of time to help prevent a massacre. Several of the most successful bands speak of receiving unexpected aid. On more than one occasion, news is brought by heralds of Chimus and Phaleron, who quickly deliver a warning of an incipient attack and then return to the Day Realm. Coupled with the powerful divinatory resonance of Bright Eyes Gleam in the Depths, these warnings help the defenders locate threatened areas and bolster the defenders. In the tumult. Dangerous as the attackers are, they are no match for fortifications or Imperial armies, and either retreat or are handily dealt with. The same pattern repeats again and again. The heralds emerge, and once they are identified, people rally to drive them away. There are tales of heroism and courage from across the Empire, yet such tales, all too often, have tragedy at their hearts. People die, even as they win these battles against the servants of Cold Sun. In Urizen. Urizen has a great many Regio aligned with Day, and while all those known are connected to familiar Eternals, the power of the Imperial enchantment causes a great many more to manifest. Cold Sun's troops attack all 3 Urizeni territories, but when they attack Morrow, they receive significantly more resistance than they were perhaps expecting. As soon as the first herald emerges from a Regio, a wall of shimmering crystal explodes around the great library of Canterspire, burning with the fury of the sun at midday as a great tolling bell rings out across the mountains. The defenders are supported by the same great beasts that came to the defence of the library when the Druge laid siege to it, prismatic, crystalline lizard servants of the celestial library itself. They do not rest until the last of Cold Sun's soldiers are destroyed, and once the Regio it has been using are secured, these gargoyle sentinels sit watchfully over them, ready to raise further alarms if needed. In war-torn Zenith, the defenders are able to draw on the power of the magical wards placed on the territory by Imperial magicians. Nightbound Proceris anchors a potent dripping echoes of the Fen, providing invaluable protection to those defending the territory from the destructive heralds. The sentinels and magicians of Zenith are filled with a cold fury. How dare these creatures come here and threaten them? Do they think they are more terrifying, more monstrous than the Druge? Do they dare to come to Zenith after all that these people have endured? Their numbers further bolstered by angry Koboldi and heralds of Estivus from the Crucible of Fate, the attackers are driven into the depths of the enchanted marshes and the forests of Lustri. They do not return. Not everyone is quite so fortunate. Following a probing attack during the summer solstice, a major force of Cold Sun soldiers attack the Grand Conservatory of Music in Redoubt. The isolated location of the hall sees the musicians and priests there taken by surprise, and while many are able to flee, many more are badly injured or killed. When sentinels from the court of the White Fountain arrive, the beautiful structure is already in flames, and the Urizen soldiers have a fierce battle on their hands. Without the intervention of Navarre Thorns and Dornish Knights dedicated to fighting Cold Sun, there might have been significant loss of life. In the Marches. In Breakersland, still recovering from the recent invasion by the Jotun, the defenders are able to draw on the power of the magical wards placed on the territory by Imperial magicians. It's fortunate that the beaters are being vigilant for threats, although they are perhaps expecting something a little less esoteric in nature. The Marches is well organised and ready to face the threat of Cold Sun, the various fortifications and local bailiffs alike working to protect the people and destroy the invading heralds. In the Mournwold, perhaps heeding the recent statement of principle from the Marcher Assembly, orcs and humans work together to drive off a major force of heralds, seemingly bent on destroying Honour's Rest. Along with the beaters organised by the Bailiff of the Downs and the garrison of Farstrider's Watch, the attack is stymied, but at some cost. The bulk of the casualties are taken by the brave defenders of the fortification. Mournwold orcs and Marcher humans alike lay down their lives to defend the orchard and the marches. Only Mittwold encounters any serious trouble, and that is more because of the other heralds ravaging the farms and towns here. but discussion of that particular problem will need to wait for another time. In Wintermark, the beacons of Harnmark are lit, but just a little too late. The halls rally, but not in time. A cohort of Cold Sun's soldiers emerge from Ereggio only a few hours' march from Freya's garden, and by the time the heroes of Wintermark and their Navarre allies arrive, it is too late. The great steel-bound doors have been shattered, the garden's halls scoured by fire, and the granite figure surmounting the grate has been torn down and reduced to rubble. The winterfolk catch the heralds before they can break through the final doors and slaughter the terrified gardeners sheltering within. The ruined chambers echo with furious battle, and while all the attackers are dealt with, the hall is left in ruins, its bounty ashes. Where the beacons of Harnmark are lit too late, however, the beacons of Calaveza are supported by a nameless Suak hero, a winterfolk captain whose soldiers help spread the warning of Cold Sun's coming to the halls so they can defend themselves. It is just as well. As it turns out, the largest force of Cold Sun attackers gathers here. It is as if something about the marshes offends the Eternal, or its heralds, on some profound level. Without the swiftly lit beacons, the second attack launched against Ishal might have succeeded. In Skarsind, sometimes the strategies used by the heralds are more cautious. In Skarsind, a significant force of Cold Sun soldiers is discovered fortifying the area around a hitherto unknown Dei Regio in Estermark, not far from Wulfric's Fall, the pass that connects to the now Thule-controlled region of Mykernia. If not for a chance meeting between a group of herders searching for a lost sheep and some Cold Sun scouts, the force might have been significantly dug in by the time anyone realised it was there. A warning is raised, with the Imperial Orcs garrison of the Will supported by Ethengor warriors, Tamatsi battle mages, and other Imperial heroes fighting several days of pitched battle against the heralds, before they are driven back, and a watch set on the Regio to ensure no more emerge. In Bastion and Rakos, some of the chapters of Highguard have received belated warning of their own. The Highborn Assembly discussed a statement of principle warning against the threat of Cold Sun, but while they supported it, it did not achieve a greater majority. Fortunately, there are any number of Highborn congregations who listen to the words of vigilance and make sure they are heeded. When the first major attack comes, the people of Highguard are ready. An attack against Sibella is intercepted and dealt with before it can do more than token damage to the town and to the physician's hall that seemed to be its main target. Unfortunately, at the same time one of Cold Sun's cadres is assaulting Bastion, another is attacking in Rakos. Their target is the town of Tabernacle, more specifically the unbound steel hall of lost chapters, a memorial to the fallen. The chapters fighting in defence of Tabernacle are able to destroy the invading heralds, but not before they have done major damage to the hall and the town itself. Many of the columns in the great portico are cracked. The statue of the basilisk that presides over the place is left headless, and many of the banners and relics in the basilica are seared by the terrible flame of Cold Sun, left naught but grey ashes. So much memorialising those lost has now been lost because of the machinations of this terrible inhuman creature. Tabernacle remains, but the servants of the wicked Eternal have struck at the heart of its people. In Theranin, the Navarre and the Great Forest Orcs of the Halt of the Oak defeat a large cohort of Cold Sun bent on burning the peaceful hospital of Peakedge Stead. It is fortunate that the Navarre are wise to the threat. Their careful watch over the woodlands allows the early signs of Cold Sun's arrival to be spotted and a warning to spread quickly through the entire territory. Yet while the heralds are prevented from destroying the hospital and slaughtering the healers there, they manage to unleash some form of magic that sees the Trods of Theranin seriously damaged. Still, at least the Trods can be repaired. Human and Orc lives cannot be restored so easily. In Varushka, when Cold Sun attempts an assault against the icy crag of the Eternal Sun in Mikarova, it quickly turns into a siege. Not only are many of the students and scholars at the crag competent battle magicians, but the vale where it stands is also home to the powerful Grimani family, Kabbalists with a long history of mastering summer magic and little patience for fools. By the time the defenders of Grimhold arrive, they discover most of the heralds already defeated. In addition to the Varushkan defenders, it seems that the college's patron Jaehaerys has sent aid in the form of moon-pale elfin warlocks armed with frigid ice daggers to support his allies. This pattern is repeated in other parts of Varushka, and the attackers are defeated with similar ruthless pragmatism. As near as anyone can tell, the heralds entirely avoid the wild woods and the cursed hills, using the iron roads to travel from settlement to settlement, which simply makes them easier to find. The protectors of each vale, not all of them entirely mortal in nature, given this is Varushka, receive significant aid from the heroes and mercenaries patrolling the roads. Whether it comes from the Day Realm or the Deep Woods, it's still a monster, as one Schlachter opines philosophically. In the League. While a few groups of Cold Sun heralds manifest within the cities of the League themselves, they are quickly dealt with. The largest attack takes place in Holberg, perhaps understandable given the emphasis that city places on knowledge and reason. Yet every League city has a fortification, and a relatively committed watch that maintains the peace. The heralds of Cold Sun are given short shrift. People still die, of course. One of the League cities, however, is not threatened. Apulian is left entirely alone. Indeed, there are no reliable reports of Cold Sun heralds being seen anywhere in Spiral, alone of all the territories of the Empire, it seems. On the coast. When the heralds of Cold Sun emerge from their regio in Madruga, Segura and Karaman, they are met with a similar fury to that they encounter in Zenith. Yet there is nothing cold about this rage. Hakima, Kohan and the families alike are brought together by a raw anger that they, who have suffered so much, might be targeted by these creatures of the Day Realm. After they lost Feroz to the Grendel, after the Jotun have invaded their western territories time and time again, it seems almost as if something snaps inside the people of the Brass Coast. Every incursion of Cold Sun is met with nearly overwhelming force from the families. The soldiers of the armies stationed in Madruga barely have time to respond before the threat is dealt with. In Karaman, this defence is further bolstered by a frozen citadel of Cathan Kane, whose cold garrison seems to relish the opportunity to fight alongside the freeborn against the unfamiliar heralds. There are several attempts to attack labour camps busy working on building roads and Camcrag across the territory, but thanks to the presence of the magically summoned fortification, no serious damage is done before the heralds are dealt with. Summer's Glory. There is one nation where the attacks are abject failures even before they begin. The nation of Dawn is currently covered in a magical aura of its own. The Eternal Maraud gave the Enchanters of Dawn a magical scroll with which to draw down the power of the Summer Realm, both to celebrate his recent patronage of the Eastern Sky and so that they could prove their magical prowess and gain his full approval. When Cold Sun attempts to send its troops into Dawn, the knights and witches and Yofolk militia seem almost to welcome the opportunity. In every case, their defence is reinforced by heralds from the Summer Realm. Maraud sends golden lions to fight in Astolat. Rhiannos sends trident-wielding tritons to fight Cold Sun on the shores of the Semelak, while Eleonaris has a small force of swift-footed stag knights stationed at the Castle of Thorns, ready to charge whichever part of the territory might need protection. Cathan Kane and Adamant send frost giants and koboldi respectively to bolster the defenders of the Adamant Gate. Gold and silver owls, servants of Barian, bring swift warning to the defenders whenever a herald of Cold Sun sets foot on any of the roads that crisscross the Dornish territories. Even Jaehaerys sends his servants to protect the beleaguered people of the Barrens, his giant spiders, cowled warlocks and goblin slingers emerging from the ruins of the Towers of the Dawn to fight alongside the households protecting the new settlers. With the aid of summer, the dogged defenders triumph over Cold Sun. It doesn't hurt that the soldiers of the Eastern Sky and the Golden Sun are here, albeit on furlough as they celebrate their recent victories in the East, nor that the nation is protected by the grand fortification of the Castle of Thorns. Improbable as it might seem, not one Dornish citizen is reported as slain by the soldiers of Cold Sun. Not even a single Yofolk fighting alongside the garrison of the fortifications falls to the heralds of the Day Realm. Respite. Almost all the Empire's fortifications have suffered a little damage, but none of the Imperial armies have been directly engaged. Where there were fortifications or armies, the damage to people has been minimal. The attacks by Cold Sun have not been severe enough to prevent defending armies resupplying, which is particularly good news for those enchanted with Brotherhood of Tian. After 6 weeks or so of fighting, attacks by and sightings of Cold Sun troops become less frequent. As the autumn equinox approaches, it seems that the Empire has weathered the storm. Ascension. 2 weeks before the autumn equinox, the attacks resume, and this time they have a very different tenor. Rather than attacking seemingly random targets, the heralds of Cold Sun begin to act like a conquering army. They quickly secure the area around the regio they emerge from, and they begin to spread out. They methodically destroy settlements, killing anyone they encounter. They use the terrain to their advantage, demonstrating awareness of where the major population centres and fortifications are to be found. They use the roads, including the blood-red roads and the iron roads, to their advantage. At first it seems they shy away from the Trods, but then the Navarre heroes dedicated to fighting them report that they are somehow severing the flow of spring magic, cutting individual Trods and causing them to wither and fade. Some of the soldiers seem to be able to wield the power of Cold Sun directly to burn out the power of a Trod as they expand. So far only Theranin has been seriously damaged, but it is surely only a matter of time before the heralds are able to destroy an entire network. Worse is to come. Where the Cold Sun forces at first gathered in groups of dozens, and then several hundred came together in a territory to launch a serious attack, now they are gathering in cohorts of several thousand. Perfectly disciplined, moving and attacking with a supernatural clarity whose effects are somewhat familiar to Imperial magicians. They set about conquering the Empire. Or more factually, they set about trying to destroy the Empire. Purity. As the autumn equinox approaches, the civil service scramble to collate the information from across the Empire. According to eyewitnesses, scouts and limited divination, there are now major Cold Sun forces all across the Empire. 4 are in the northwest in Rundle Marsh in Calaveza, in Valasmark in Hahnmark, in North Pines in Herkinia, and in Oakways in Miaran. 2 are in Verushka, in Livards, in Volodmarts, and in Duzikani in Karov. 1 is slowly spreading across Burnish in Segura, and a final force has coalesced in Woodbury in Bastion itself. Estimates in each case suggest that while they are not individually equal to an Imperial army, their fighting strength is estimated to be around 3,000 soldiers. Their remarkable acuity means that they are a tangible threat to the safety of the territories where they have appeared. They are also capable of moving. Some are close together, especially in the northwest, and might in theory and may join up to focus their power. The Empire has never in its history faced a threat like this. There is nothing to stop the Cold Sun sending more troops through the regio it controls, to bolster these numbers even further. Worse, the Empire has seen immediate evidence that this means Cold Sun can potentially send armies anywhere in the Empire should it so wish. While they are scattered across the Empire, it is likely they are in constant communication with one another. Messengers from one part of the Empire can enter the Day Realm with a report, and another messenger be dispatched to deliver intelligence to any force anywhere in the Empire. There's also no telling what kind of magic Cold Sun might be able to entrust to its servants. The ability to burn out the Trods might only be the start. The one saving grace is that by the end of the autumn equinox, the power of the Imperial enchantment should have faded sufficiently that the regio it has bolstered will lose power again. Unless, of course, the servants of Cold Sun have some way to keep them open. Sound and Fury. There are other Eternals who wish Imperial citizens ill. The Whisper Gallery, the Maelstrom, the Death of Empires, the Green Mother, and of course, Blood on the Snow. Only Yornagra has ever attempted anything resembling an attack of this kind, and even then her depredations were restricted to territories outside the Empire, and were not remotely on this scale. The Imperial Conclave has placed a barrier between these monsters and the Empire, a protection they cannot easily penetrate without the aid of the occasional rogue traitor. No such interdiction prevents Cold Sun sending its servants through the regio into Imperial territories. Nonetheless, most scholars conclude that the unprecedented scale of this attack can only be possible because the Empire chose to cast a massive day ritual, aligning the Empire with the Day Realm, while Cold Sun was preparing to attack. Cold Sun launched scores of sporadic raids against the Empire before, during, and after the summit, but there is nothing to suggest that the Eternal possessed the kind of power needed to bring so many of their forces into the Empire. It can only have been made possible due to the power of the ritual. That ritual's power is fading even now. In the event the Conclave does declare enmity against Cold Sun, this will almost certainly prevent new heralds entering the Empire, but neither enmity nor the dwindling magics enchanting the Empire will do anything about the thousands of the Eternal soldiers currently present across the Empire. They will be denied reinforcements, but those forces that are now present in the Empire will be able to attack with impunity until they are dealt with. Game information. Every Imperial fortification has taken 500 casualties in the process of driving off Cold Sun heralds, and will receive no resupply this season. The exceptions are the fortifications of Dawn, the 2 fortifications in Spiral, and the Brock in Brokeliand, which is not within Imperial territory. No Imperial armies have suffered casualties, and their ability to resupply has not been impeded. The Grand Conservatory of Music in Redoubt has been destroyed, as has Freya's Gift in Harnmark and the Unbound Hall of Steel Chapters in Raycos. The Trods of Theranin have been damaged by Cold Sun. They are still functional, but are likely to slowly deteriorate over time if not repaired. Unfortunately, as Theranin is a territory with a Valorn, it will be necessary to repair them by performing the ritual at a Regio in a region with the Valorn quality. There are now major forces of Cold Sun heralds in several Imperial territories. The Civil Service are collating reports, but exact numbers are not available. It will fall to Imperial diviners to determine precise numbers, likely with rituals such as Eyes of the Sun and Moon. What is clear, however, is that these armies follow similar rules to those that apply to any other campaign army, with a few exceptions. They do not seem to suffer problems with securing beachheads. That is, they have a quality similar to the technique of the mountainous ascent wielded by the Citadel Guard, so they do not suffer penalties to attack a region which is not adjacent to a region they control. They are capable of being in a territory without controlling a region. Driving them out of a territory by generating more victory points will not be an effective strategy. The armies must instead be forced to disband. As long as they are not under the effect of enmity, the army will be able to benefit from natural resupply as long as they have access to a suitable day regio, and there is no opposing force present during the season. Even while attacking, more heralds will be dispatched from the Day Realm to reinforce the army. Participation. During the last 3 months, there have been attacks across the Empire. In each case, players are encouraged to create stories of how this has affected them. It is important to note, however, that while there have been many assaults, Cold Sun is by no means everywhere. People are also going about their day-to-day lives without any threat from the heralds. Their attacks have been aimed against specific targets, often those associated with some combination of spring or night magic, music or the arts, intuition and imagination. Even though there are armies of Cold Sun heralds now in several regions across the Empire, their invasion is still in its early stages. It is entirely possible for a player character to have no further involvement with these attackers than hearing stories of attacks from other parts of their nation. Design note. It's important to recognise that Cold Sun is a military threat, not a purely magical one. While the nature of the armies is esoteric, heralds from the Day Realm, they are fundamentally armies. It is not possible to create an arcane projection to dismiss them any more than it is possible to dismiss a Druge or a Jotun army. They are here, in the Empire, and looking to destroy as much of it as possible. Now that they are here, they are every bit as much flesh and blood as any other military threat the Empire faces. Conjunctions. There are several conjunctions of the Sentinel Gate that will allow Imperial heroes to engage Cold Sun forces. Further details will be available shortly before the autumn equinox. There is no major conjunction, however. Cold Sun will not be faced as part of a battle during the autumn equinox.